Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy, and good morning and a warm welcome from the US Embassy to this virtual event, Unwrapping Plastics, How You Can Be a Part of the Solution. I really am so honored and so pleased to be joined today by our moderator and also by our distinguished group of panelists, Dr. Jenna Jambeck, Anton Ngui, Dr. Nicolas, and I think they're really going to bring a very interesting perspective, something that I'm very excited to hear about. And I just wanted to kind of start off to kind of kick off this event by giving just brief remarks on sort of how we at the U.S. Embassy and at the United States kind of see this issue. So, we consider plastic pollution to be one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our time. And it's without a doubt that combating plastic pollution is a good in and of itself. Plastic pollution is fueling the climate crisis. And, the United States has to take some responsibility as a major producer and exporter of plastic. And we have, I think, because of that, a responsibility to take a leadership role in combating the damage to the climate caused by plastic production, in addition to the damage to the environment that is caused by plastic waste. So in addition to programs like this that are supported by the US Embassy, the United States will also support multinational negotiations and a global agreement to combat ocean plastic pollution at the upcoming 5th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly at the end of February, which is something I'm very pleased to announce. And, I just kind of wanted to finish off by saying that plastic pollution is a global problem that requires action and coordination on a global scale. However, it's also a crisis that calls for individual action, activism, and real leadership. And I really just am so excited to hear from all of our panelists today the steps that we can all take to address this problem, both locally and globally. We face a monumental challenge of addressing plastic pollution, but if we're ambitious in both our global and local efforts, if we combine the efforts of government and industry with those of communities and individuals, if we empower the innovative approaches that we've seen in Malaysia and Sabah and elsewhere, I'm convinced that this is a challenge we can all face together. That's it for me, and I'll turn it back over to the capable hands of Amy. Who will hopefully get unmuted soon.
Unmute me. Oh, okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, you're right. It takes everybody. And although we have been saying that message over and over again, it seems like it's kind of hard to get every single one on board, right? But that's where we are trying to get at, seeing different forces coming together to solve this decades. It's going to be a century-long problem if you're not going to do anything, I think, concrete and really obvious about it. So as I mentioned earlier on, and Katie also mentioned some of our speakers who are going to be on today, we have superstars on the show. People who I mentioned have been dealing with the problem for years and have not yet given up, because there's still a lot of work to do, right? So we have Dr. Jenna Jambeck, a National Geographic Fellow and Professional Environmental Engineering currently at the University of Georgia. So she's joining us all the way from Georgia. And we have Anton Ngui, co-founder of Future Alam Borneo. He's also an awesome dude. I've actually known him from years back. We're going to talk to him also soon and hear him present his experience, especially in bringing awareness on environmental ethics through programs like arts, music, festivals, right? And also we have Dr. Nicolas Pilcher, founder and executive director of the Marine Research Foundation, MRF, without whom today's event would literally be impossible. So he's also been based in Sabah for many years, and he's seen the problem. He's been doing a lot of stuff about it as well. But before we delve deeper into what each of these individuals do, let's get on to Dr. Jenna, who's joining us all the way from Georgia. I was made to understand it's about 9 p.m. there, 10 p.m. It's at night, right? Dr.
Yep,
Jenna.
it's 10 p.m. You're right.
Yeah. You're so full of energy. You're still up. You look like you just woke up in the morning.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm kind of a night owl, so it's okay with me. And it's just really exciting to be here. It's my honor to be invited to something like this, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you have a lot of awesome accolades in your bio, Dr. Jenna, and it's basically what you do have been surrounding areas of research, right? Research and teaching environmental engineering, focusing on waste management, specifically solid waste management and marine debris. So let's read a little bit about her bio. Dr. Jenna has been named the Georgia Athletic Association Distinguished Professor in Environmental Engineering. She's an Associate Director of the UGA's New Materials Institute and Director of the Center for Circular Materials Management, a very busy person. Based on her pioneering research, Jenna was named a National Geographic Fellow in 2018 and served as co-lead of an international female-led National Geographic expedition team in 2019, which specifically studied plastic pollution in one of the world's most iconic waterways, the Ganges River. She is, okay, get this, co-creator of the Marine Debris Tracker mobile app, which helps scientists to create a more comprehensive picture of marine debris and plastic pollution while informing and empowering community decision-making. So a lot of stuff there, Dr. Jenna. And maybe what could be useful to our audience today is sharing with us through your many years of experience, through the many roles that you play, where do you think we are at when it comes to waste management?
Sure. And I have a few slides, I think, that I think will help us kind of get through this, and mostly to keep me on track with time, because I like to talk. So even at this hour, so let me get this up here. Move us over to here. All right, so I'm going to sort of take this sea to source approach, and I think to your question about sort of where we're at, I'm going to, take this big global picture and talk about that in 1950, we were only creating 2 million metric tons of plastic, or we only had created. And, that's for production for use. But as of 2015, that number had grown tremendously to a cumulative 8.3 billion metric tons. So it's not really that long of a time span, but a huge amount of material that you can't even really fathom, right? You can convert that to 80 million blue whales, but we can't imagine that either. Because about 40% of what we produce for plastic is packaging, it means that a significant fraction, 6.3 billion metric tons, had already become waste by that same time frame. And so looking at sort of what we had done with that waste, I think this was very eye-opening when we did this work. With Roland Geyer, only 9% of that had been recycled. I think people thought a lot more was getting recycled, but all the reasons that we find plastic very useful, that it can be soft or rigid or a film or like any color of the rainbow, different additives for different reasons, that is actually what makes it really hard to recycle, because it has such a variety of materials. And then looking at this, seeing that 79% was ending up in landfills or the natural environment. And so in that vein, really pretty much everywhere we look, we find plastic now. I mean, I hear about stories where, parts of our ocean have not been explored yet, and the explorers go there, and what do they see but plastic on the sea floor? So it's been found from the depths of our ocean to the highest points in our world. Colleagues of mine found microplastic on the top of Mount Everest. And so it's really everywhere. And these pink circles are samples taken of plastic floating on the surface of the ocean. The yellow sort of arrows are plastic flows into the ocean from rivers, and then the blue our concentrations of plastic on land. So this is sort of a mashup of a few different data sets by National Geographic. So in in 2020, almost 2 years ago now, this was also really significant milestone in the research field. Plastic pollution 20 years ago wasn't even a term that was used. It was marine debris when I first started researching this, and it has evolved because it really has become plastic pollution. And so for the cover of Science magazine to have two parallel studies that came to the same conclusions and to be titled plastic pollution was a very significant milestone in our research field. And what this infographic shows, just quickly, is that our business as usual, even with what we're doing. So amplifying what you said, if we don't be more aggressive, we're going to end up with 20 to 53 million metric tons of plastic in our aquatic systems. So we really need to be more aggressive all the way across this value chain. And this value chain, for me, this intervention framework that I came up with in 2016 and now has been published within our most recent US National Academies report, is looking at all the way from, how do we get to zero entering the ocean, reduce that. We can, intervene at all these different stages. We can reduce the amount that we're using in the first place. We can look at, if we have to have packaging, other innovative materials and product design. We can decouple, hopefully, waste generation from economic growth, so reduce waste that we're generating in the first place, and then improve our infrastructure for managing the materials that we are generating, hopefully getting to that circular materials management. Every output becomes an input, just like nature. And then if we have to have this last chance for capture, at least we can keep it out of the ocean. But really, at this point, we need to think about keeping it completely out of our environment, because we now don't know there's impacts to land and freshwater systems as well. But collecting data at this point, because that data can feed information to the start of this framework to think about how can we just prevent those materials from getting into the environment in the first place. And so I want to zoom in quickly to the work that we're currently doing. So I moved from big global analyses to also including sort of really the front lines I see of this issue in our communities and in our cities. So that's where many decisions are made as an environmental engineer. These are the roots of our work. And so really looking at the city as a complex system and holistically with these 7 spokes of input, community awareness, product design, use versus single-use items, collection of materials, end of cycle, which is waste management, but we're trying to shift that paradigm to thinking about it as staying in the system, and then what ends up in the environment. And this, of course, this whole system, if you think about the policies that exist, the economics that are there, and the governance are all sort of these driving factors. And then we are all influencers of this system. And so one thing that's important to this whole component, you mentioned Marine Debris Tracker. I want to say this is open data citizen science movement, community science-based, completely free on all platforms, and the data is free and available online to everyone at all times. And this data, while we don't want to burden community members, this is used by scientists and community members, but you can really think about how collecting this kind of data can sort of lead you to interventions and solutions to the problem. And so we actually collect really detailed data on like what is ending up on the ground. And then that can lead us to thinking about almost investigating, how did it get here? What was the path? Why did this end up here? And then we can come together and talk about that and bring the stakeholders that really can hopefully change this system together. What can we do about it? And so I just want to highlight quickly, as you heard for the National Geographic Sea to Source expedition, this is an example of just the data. You could go to the Debris Tracker website and see and explore all of this data that we collected there, and just examples of people talking about the data and people, what does this mean for our community? We collect this data and what can we do about it? And so we have actually done a little bit of this work in Malaysia. So in Malacca, as a part of this urban ocean program, there's 5 cities in 5 different countries where we've conducted the circularity assessment protocol. And quickly, I know there's kind of a lot of data here, so this is not meant to be super data heavy, but just really thinking about, you know, not only what ends up on the ground, but what are available to us for purchasing. You know, do we have even choices to make? You know, do we have other choices that we can make, right? So all of our most popular convenience items are things that we have to buy. They're in multi-layer film and clear plastic. That's the majority. That's really challenging. There's all kinds of materials. As I said, the wide variety of use makes it challenging for managing. And then look at where our products come from. They might be manufactured locally, but these tall bars are the distance to the parent companies that are supplying these materials. And so if they are, you know, all the way across the world, that's really important to know for engaging the right people for creating change in these systems. We saw in Malacca the top 2 items, which are really seen globally: tobacco and food wrappers are top items that we see. So documenting this work and just giving a lot of our local implementation partners critical, especially, I mean, they did all this field work in partnership with us and are a huge part of this project. And so that was UKM in Malaysia. And so that is trained and paid volunteer, or sorry, not volunteers, trained and paid folks. Also, you can collect this data with volunteers. And I just want to say we've done that in the Mississippi River with all kinds of folks that have come out. And they also took training to be able to do this and just really engaged with the Mississippi River Cities and Towns initiative. So again, if you get lots of people working together all along, for example, an entire river basin, you can really get a lot of work done. And all these mayors now have this information for their communities. So people surveyed over 30,000. These are American football fields, which is a popular subject right now at UGA as we just won the national championship. But over 1,000 items or 100,000 items were logged in this community-based effort. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the people. I know there's excellent work going on in Malaysia, and I'm so excited to hear more about that and see how those innovations and things can be scaled for solutions. A lot of potential. So thank you so much and look forward to the panels and questions.
Thank you, Dr. Jenna. Yeah, it's really good to see that more and more movements are being created to combat this problem. And I think there has been some significant work being done in Sabah as well, you know, like just to connect that. But here, I see someone commenting in the chat, which makes sense. Just a little bit of feedback to what Dr. Jenna just presented. KK has an estimated plastic waste volume of 75 ton a day. Sanakan has 40 ton a day. Tawau has 27 ton a day. So Sabah's plastic volumes are a little bit too small to create a full-blown mechanical recycling mechanism like in Peninsula Malaysia. Maybe we can discuss that later on, right? So we will be reading out questions. Yeah, we'll be reading out the questions from our participants later on. For now, I think we could go on with introducing our next speaker. I think what we're going to try and do here today is let everyone present, and then we will have the discussion later. A much more interactive session in the Q&A later on, right? So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Anton Ngui. Hello, Anton. Good morning from Sandakan, right?
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. So my name is Anton.
Yeah.
Anton. I'm from Sandakan, and a small town on the easterly coast of Sabah, island of Borneo. I'm going to share my slide. Give me a second.
I haven't introduced Anton properly yet, I feel. He's a very humble guy. Not too bad himself. I think a lot of people do not know, apart from Anton being the co-founder of Future Alam Borneo, right? Who've been organizing the very famous here in Sabah, Borneo Rhythms of Rimba Wildlife Festival. For those of you who might not know, it's a multi-day outdoor event filled with music, art, adventure, and always highlighting issues in regards to socio-economy and especially environmental, right? But here's a little fun fact about Anton. For those of you who might know him in Kota Kinabalu, but not know him. He's actually an environmental protection and biodiversity conservation IVLP alumni. Woot woot, US Embassy. Right? And yeah, co-founded the Borneo Eco Film Festival, also another significant event here in Sabah back in 2011, which inspired them to create Future Alam Borneo, which aims to create opportunities, connections, and platforms to showcase Borneo's ecological potential to audiences through educational festival platforms, creative writing, storytelling, public art, and design. Basically using a lot of creativity, activities that require a lot of creativity when it comes to creating awareness, right? So yeah, Anton, take it away.
Thank you very much, Amy. She's done my presentation already. Abis, no, kidding. Thank you, Amy, once again for the introduction. Thank you for the US Embassy in Kuala Lumpur for the opportunity to share the work we do here in Sandakan through Future Alam Borneo. Thank you for the Marine Research Foundation as well for organizing it. Future Alam Borneo is a very, very small NGO founded in 2014 in Sandakan by a bunch of local volunteers. We're all volunteers. We are, most of us are not experts, not scientists, but we just felt we needed to do something to encourage our local audiences and our community to understand and appreciate the environment that surrounds us much better. So having lots of friends and liking to do different interesting things, we felt we needed to create education that was through experience. So people experience and engage and interact, and they would appreciate the subject matter at hand better by getting involved. So over the years, we've sort of zoomed in on a few things that we try to tie everything together to focus our efforts. One is realizing that most of the impact, more negative than positive perhaps, on the planet now has been because of humans, ourselves, everybody. Understanding where each individual comes from, the background, your context, your community, all these factors play a part in the decisions people make on how they perceive the environment around them, how they react. Getting active with people, doing things with them. I think sometimes we have to hold people by their hands, we have to lead them. Sometimes we just share something and then they get it. So there's so many variables, so many different ways that we need to engage with each other to convey the information. And of course, we believe that by having positive examples in our community, in our society, that eventually the ripple effect will spread out to the wider community and wider audiences. So I'm going to jump into this plastics project that we started in 2019. We found a funder through Yayasan Hasana in KL. It was to start in 2020, but COVID came along, but it made things much more interesting as well. So the Sandakan Plastic Solutions Project was looking for years, maybe for a decade, at this problem here in Sandakan among our water villages. Sandakan is a coastal town. We have lots of people living on houses, stilt houses on top of the water, the coastline. And obviously some of the waste, or a lot of the waste, goes into the sea instead of into a bin. These are very recent photographs. When the high tide comes in, it pushes it all up onto the beach and onto the shoreline. It gets trapped there. And this is an image during COVID, during lockdowns. People were buying takeaway. There's still polystyrene packaging boxes around, and people were just throwing it out of their windows. So we have a very small team. Our NGO is only about 12 paid up members. And on this project, we have 3 members from the NGO working on it. This is Ismail, one of my colleague. We did some preliminary sampling of the water and the sand beneath the houses, and we discovered obviously a lot of E. coli, Listeria, harmful bacteria from discharge from homes, as well as a lot of microplastics. The labs gave us a ton of data that we didn't understand, but we realized that they correlated to the type of junk that people were throwing into the sea and that was getting trapped in the soil and in the sand. So our project focused on two communities. One is on this island opposite Sandakan called Bahala, on the island of Bahala called Kampung Bahala. And these are images from the kampung, still relevant today. I've seen many a time where children are playing in the sea, which is a very normal thing to do, but surrounding them is a huge amount of waste, as you can see. And some of the children are playing with the rubbish itself. Our project sort of wanted to, it was a pilot idea, it was a pilot project, it still is. We're still experimenting, still facing lots of obstacles. We built two litter traps, designs that came from our friends in the Netherlands called Clear Rivers, one of which we deployed at Bahala. Here's a picture of it being transported to site, and a drone photo of where we parked it. This is a photo of the drone on the island looking at Sandakan town. This is on a clean day. So this is a typical day with the trash collected and trapped in the litter trap. And we would go every few days to collect and document the type of junk we collect. This is samples of example of the things, mineral bottles predominantly, that we catch in our litter trap, not fish, but litter. We weigh it, and then our island staff help us sort it and document it as best as they can. We have tried to do regular engagements, but because of the restrictions of COVID, we were very limited in how many people we could have. This was a more recent photograph where things have improved. We're allowed to have group gatherings, and it's a little bit safer, but still, there's pandemic risks around us. We've done presentations, we've shown some documentaries. We tried to run a competition to design a product out of waste plastic. This is the other community that we're working at, Sim Sim, which is on the coastline of Sandakan. Image of the litter trap again, floating just off the island, the community, relocating it near the our state town mosque, facing the community again. So the litter trap, the experience of the litter trap has been that it is effective. However, it was a design for rivers and canals. So in the open ocean, it faced a lot of battering, and obviously, because of the scale of our ocean, it probably trapped less than probably 1% or probably less. Of the 10 or so months that we were collecting rubbish and documenting it, we collected about almost 3 tons of rubbish, 1.4 on one side and 1.3 on the other side. A lot of it was organic debris, but there was a lot of plastic waste as well. This is typically what you would see in a full litter trap on a normal day, not a good day. I think on a good day, the rubbish will be overflowing. So collection was not our only objective. Obviously, we're not here just to collect trash. We wanted to try and experiment with solutions. So we found this NGO called Precious Plastics, founded in the Netherlands, and they're global now. They've got blueprints whereby you can make your own machines to shred plastic, to process it into little plastic products. Open source, you can build it yourself, or you can buy it from some of the manufacturers that are popping up all over the world. So we have some machines with us, although we have not used them fully yet. We have started shredding, but we are now moving on to the stage of turning the trash that we collected, close to 800 kilograms of plastic, that we will turn into products that the community themselves would find useful. So one of the items that we're developing with a manufacturer of the mold is a clip that would help keep your food fresh, as well as making furniture, maybe souvenirs such as turtles, and talk about the pollution to wildlife, marine life. And we've got this place to park all our machines. Sorry, it's taken up so much time, but reduce, reuse, recycle. It's so relevant, and yeah, I'll be happy to talk to anybody afterwards about your ideas as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anton, for sharing that insight with us. I mean, we, as mentioned many times, this has been a decades-long problem, and we've seen those kind of images over and over and over again, and efforts have been initiated to counter the problem. And yet here we are. Those photos that Anton shared, as he mentioned, were very recent. That means, are we achieving any progress in the way that we are dealing with these things? And I was just thinking at the back of my mind, okay, yeah, we do coastal cleanup, we create machines that reduce plastic, but also I'm interested to go back to what Jenna mentioned earlier. How do we stop from having the plastics in the environment, in our community in the first place? And I can't help but think about the makers, the producers and manufacturers of these products. How much are we doing that involves them in playing a more active role in helping with the problem? But before we go to the Q&A again and the creative discussion, let's introduce our next guest, our next speaker, right? And finally, he's the guy responsible for organizing today's event, but he's going last in the speakers list. Dr. Nicolas Pilcher, founder and executive director of the Marine Research Foundation. He's actually a British marine biologist who's been based in Sabah, where he established MRF, the Marine Research Foundation. And Nick here has worked extensively on conservation projects in Malaysia, in the Middle East, and across the Indo-Pacific region, focusing his skills on saving endangered sea turtles, primarily dugongs, sharks, and rays, and other marine life. But he also works extensively with major industries to design and deliver solutions to the environmental challenges that we face. And one of his flagship projects is introducing turtle excluder devices to Malaysian trawl fisheries, which became a legal requirement in 2017. So that's kind of big, right? And although his primary work was to focus on saving sea creatures, but obviously all of these things intertwine: sea life, communities' lives, and the rubbish we produce through our own doings. Funny, right? How life works. Anyway, Dr. Nicolas, take it away.
Thank you, Amy, and good morning to everybody. Good afternoon and good evening to those of us joining from other parts of the planet. I also have a couple of slides I'd like to share with everybody, but I would like to just take a moment and acknowledge the US Embassy for hosting this event and bringing us all together. My colleague Liana, who is handling the logistics of the call, the Zoom call on our behalf. And great to see Anton and Jenna with us to share their experiences and kind of put everything into context for us in terms of thinking about the plastics side. So as Amy says, my background, I'm a sea turtle biologist. I didn't start out with the goal of solving a plastics issue ever in my life. And I'm still probably not even close to being there. But over the years, as we've been running conservation projects here in Sabah and overseas, obviously the plastics issue and the trash at sea issue has become a very real, and it's been right in front of us every single day. I'm just going to put a couple of slides up on the screen for everybody. Hopefully this will work. There we go. MRF's role is really that of being a science-based organization that brings the right, credible, objective, scientific data to the decision table so that people, governments, government agencies can make decisions related to the sort of data we're collecting, be that related to sea turtle biology, be that related to the bycatch of sharks and rays, or the management of dugong populations. Our role is very much that of a science-based organization. And when it comes to the waste, we sort of found ourselves a little bit like fish out of water. It's not something that we dealt with on a day-to-day basis, and it's not something that that we had any particular skills or skill set related to this. And so the work that we do is really more aimed at trying to get it out of the ocean now that it's there. And I completely understand that that is nothing but a Band-Aid on the problem, right? It's very much right at the very end of what Jenna was presenting in that process, you know, the getting it out of the system. But we can't just leave it there either. Very much like Anton and his team in Sandakan, trying to find some creative ways to remove the plastics from the environment. And by all means, I fully recognize that there is a need right up front for us to be changing our mindsets in terms of what products we're using, how we're disposing of them, whether we are recycling, upscaling, whatever it might be. But the bottom line is that right now, there is a load of this plastic already in the ocean. And if we don't do something about cleaning this up, it's going to continue to remain in the ocean. And it's not going to help the environment at all, even though it might become a habitat for some species like crabs or small fish. This is just one example of a small little fish, but over the last, I'm going to say 6 months in focus, but we've been participating with a group in KK called the Kinabalu Dive Rangers. And that's a group of volunteer divers. And when one of the dive instructors or dive masters sees a discarded net at sea, then we would mobilize, or the team would mobilize a boat and some volunteer divers to go and clean that up and get it out of the ocean. That sort of morphed a little bit into a more of a generic cleanup program. And you can see here just a couple of images of the sort of waste that gets collected and picked up just off a single, this is from a single dive, just around a single dive site. And this could go on every single day of the week, and we still wouldn't finish collecting all of the rubbish that's out there. But this is one of the programs that MRF participates in and raise funds for, so that we can support the cost of fuel and the cost of getting divers out to clean up some of the waste. And I'm going to say that Liana, who is on the call today, has been instrumental in running this program on our behalf. And she and the team of volunteer divers have collected load. You can see it's a never-ending stream of trash that comes out of the ocean. I think one of the really cool aspects of the work over the last few months has been that we were very lucky to have a generous donor who supported some of this work. And we were able to support some of the dive masters and dive instructors who had been out of work and impacted by the COVID pandemic. And so rather than just ask them to help clean up the oceans while they were worrying about putting food on the table, this program was also able to support them in a small way and provide a little bit of a sustenance and livelihood to them. So that was one of the small ways in which we were able to contribute to that process. But week after, or every second week, the team would go out, and there was just a never-ending stream of rubbish. And so there have to be better ways. We can't have just a group of scuba divers dropping down into a small limited area, covering maybe just one little dive site, or 50 or 100 square meters, and thinking that we're solving the problem. It's unfortunate, but the amount of waste that's out there is massive. And so in the last year to year and a half, we've been entering into dialogue with a partner in Japan called Nippon Koei. It's a firm, an environmental engineering firm, and also in partnership with DBKK, the Kota Kinabalu Town Council, to look at ways to have active vessels that could be cleaning up some of this waste. And in hopefully by June this year, we will have either one or two of these vessels operating on a trial basis around KK, where they will be able to actively navigate into the areas where the waste occurs. We've also been in discussions with a group called DHI, who have very generously given us some background on some of the studies they've done on the waste. But that also has helped us identify where there might be priority areas. Certainly when we have increased rainfall, there's increased washout of debris from different rivers, and that gives us an idea of where these boats might be better positioned to collect waste and dispose of it on land. Again, I'm going to reiterate that we fully understand this is only a band-aid on the problem of plastics entering the ocean in the first place. But I'm still convinced that if we don't do something about ensuring that these plastics don't continue to clog marine ecosystems, then we are going to continue seeing marine species at risk, be those big charismatic fauna such as turtles or sharks or rays, or be there small things that maybe go unnoticed to the general public. And it could be smothering of reefs or very specific reef invertebrates or fishes that are critical to the survival and the ecology of reefs. Another one of the programs that we have worked on, and we have worked on a design and worked with a team of engineers in the United Kingdom, is to develop some mechanized drain cleaners. In Kota Kinabalu and in many parts of Malaysia, we have these big concrete storm drains that carry rainwater in an organized manner down towards the oceans. And in a couple of places in KK, there are some net barriers that have been placed there by the town council to try and prevent plastics from entering the ocean. And one of the challenges lies in being able to clean that barrier sufficiently frequently so that it doesn't clog. Because if the barrier clogs, the waste gets pushed underneath, and at the end of the day, it reaches the ocean anyway. And so the thoughts are to come up with some sort of a mechanized system that is solar powered and integrated to a waste processing grid, where the wastes can be collected and compacted and taken to a recycling center where they could be further processed. We were in the middle of putting this together with a group of engineers in the UK when the pandemic hit, and we've been a bit limited in how we could roll out something like this more recently. But I guess the role MRF can play in this at the moment is one in actively trying to remove these plastics from at least the marine environment in front of KK. And second, that through the work that we do, we hope that it raises the profile of the problem, certainly amongst, say, groups like the town council, DBKK, who would be in a much better position to take care of this problem long term, rather than this being a sort of passionate NGO-driven initiative that at some point might not be able to continue due to funding or due to other logistics arrangements. So those are some of the ideas that I have from my side. I think that the challenges lie not only in preventing waste from getting to the ocean in the first place, but in finding creative ways of getting all of that waste that is already in the ocean out. And making sure that it doesn't continue to cause an impact in the marine environment. So those are thoughts from my side, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick, for presenting that. And I can't help but really think about what you said about how massive the problem is, and that us keeping on cleaning up, no matter how many people do coastal cleanup, debris cleanup every year, it would be impossible to solve the problem unless we all come together and truly address the issue at its root, right? Yeah, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, all attendees, presentations from our three distinguished speakers for today. We've heard from Dr. Jenna, we've heard from Anton, we've heard from Nicolas about how big the problem is. And so we're going to get into Q&A. I don't think we have much time. We have about 10 minutes before we need to wrap this up. The British sipping slang because of just heard Dr. Nicolas presented.
Aku orang Sabah, Pak.
Orang Sabah ba? Oke juga tuh. Tapi antipatrin kalau udah cakap English. Well, okay, let's get on to the question and answer segment of today's event. Right, we have a lot of questions, and I don't think we will be able to address all of them today. But we'll get to some of the first ones, I think, to be fair, right? And I think between our speakers, you all can decide which ones you're going to take. I saw one here from Brit, who asked our speakers, what are your opinions on waste incineration for energy generation, like in Sweden? So, and also the second one from the same person, from Brit, microplastics in our food source have increased. Should this be a major concern for authorities such as the FDA? And how can this problem be tackled? Yeah, waste incineration for energy generation. I mean, that's probably one of the good things that we can make out of our waste, right? Who would like to take this? Can I give it to Dr. Jenna?
Sure. I think it would be important for Anton to comment on this from a local place-based, I think, context.
Yeah.
But I'm more than happy to just, in general, say I visited facilities in Japan and Taiwan and the US that are utilizing waste for combustion with energy recovery. But you have to then have a guaranteed waste stream. So if you're trying to do waste reduction, that becomes a challenge, but many of the places that utilize it just do not have land. But air pollution, toxicity within waste and air pollution is a very big concern, and they have to be operated so at such a narrow window of keeping those toxins out of the air that it is very challenging to operate them in many ways. And then you still have ash to landfill, and that ash has concentrated, usually salts, but potentially metals and other things. So it's not, you do reduce your volume, but you still have to build and construct a whole landfill. So I think it's not the solution that you just go to automatically. There's so many things that you'd want to do before that and make sure that, reduction and recycling would really come first. And this is just a global perspective, but Anton, I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah.
For a local, community.
Do you think it's possible? Yeah, in Sabah.
Thank you, Dr. Jenna. I think I agree with you. It's the solution is not just one answer. It's multifold. In Sandakan's context, we only have a landfill. We have no processing at all. Our landfill is so big, we can smell it for miles away. All these incineration, they're good, but I think humans or man or humanity, we have to apply more technology to look at the problem in a much bigger scale, because like you mentioned, when you incinerate, you have all that ash, all the chemicals and such, and we have to handle that as well. That's another problem. So do we look at it just as one solution or a multitude of solutions to fix the problem? I'd like to add that my personal background is product design. I studied my university and all that, and I worked for 5 years in a product design company producing products for households. We use a lot of packaging to make the things look nice. Any new product that comes out with new packaging to attract consumers. So this, the issue of products is in me. I know what it means to make something nice so that it sells. But what do we do with it afterwards? I think we have to think about our over-reliance on single-use products.
Yeah.
Things that we throw away.
Yeah.
Too fast.
Nick, you wanted to say something?
Just briefly, that while there are also technological concerns over processing waste and turning it into energy, I guess one of my fears is that certainly in the developing world, that people become or kind of think of that as being a great solution, and in the process forget that we should be reducing the waste in the first place. As Jenna says, any one of those plants requires feeding massive amounts of waste to keep it going. And so then the concern I have is that people be like, well, then we need this waste so that we can keep this thing going. And in reality, and just like Anton says, we need to be thinking long before that about how we minimize the use of these things in the first place.
Yeah. Maker, again, like I cannot help but have that thought in my mind. It's about the production, our reliance also, right? The way our society, our generation have been relying so much on plastic that I was pushing my trolley, my shopping cart yesterday. Everything, I brought my own shopping bags, cloth shopping bags, and I was so proud of myself. And then as I was walking to the car, but everything in it is wrapped in plastic individually. So like, this is not a solvable problem if you're going to try and do it by yourself. So it takes a community, and I feel it relies. We need to rely a lot on collective awareness. So there still has to be a lot of work in making each individual realize that we all can play a role, right, in helping to reduce this problem, because otherwise we're all just going to be a generation of plastic, like literally consuming plastic. So many questions. I'm looking at it and I'm actually panicking because like, we're never going to finish all of this today. But I think a lot of them have also been answered one way or another by our speakers through their answers to previous questions or in their presentations. But I would like to bring us to one question by, why am I not scrolling? Come on, technology, don't fail me. There's one here in regards to, hold on, yeah. My computer, my laptop is giving up on me. It's not. Okay, so now we know that can happen. Okay, so one here from Mageswari, I think he asked about plastic. Okay, so this one by Usman Sunusi, sorry. The UN, United Nations, has recognized plastics under SDG, specifically SDG 14, and also under the UNEP resolutions, which try to address the menace of plastic pollution. How are these translated into action by member countries? And does these measures have acceptable index of measurement globally? If yes, and how are the measures making an impact? Because I think that's, considering that we've all been having, we've been having a lot of programs to address this problem, and yet the problem is still very significantly large. Let's talk about the impact, right? So that question over there, can Nick take that?
So
I could, oh, sorry.
Or,
Yes,
yeah, Dr. Jenna. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I've interfaced with UNEP quite a bit on this issue over the years. And yes, it was great when SDG came out because it's specifically addressing this. I would say many of the member states are doing national action plans. So, you know, Indonesia came out with theirs not long after 2015. There's one in Vietnam. There's, you know, they're all across the board. Even the US now with this National Academies Committee that I was just on, you know, are starting to think about the plans that we can have for each member state. And then, as Katie said at the beginning, it's really ramping up to this UNEA 5, which is happening in February, where this global agreement is going to be discussed. And so everyone can sort of bring their perspectives from each country to inform those discussions. There are communities of practice. In fact, I'm in a meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for harmonization of data. So basically, lots of data is collected around the world. It has not been, some of it has been disparate and also, not in ways that it can be harmonized or synthesized. And so talking about that so that we could get that global index, the national indices that can be compared, and then we could measure impact. But I would say those two studies I referenced in Science from last year, they both took a business as usual and then predictive approach, saying, here were these actions we need to take to get, reduce the quantity entering the ocean, some of them just below the 8 million metric ton benchmark and some of them lower than that. But as I said, sort of it needs to be all of the above in terms of actions to actually make that happen. So hopefully that addresses in general that question.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jenna. So no matter what policies are there, right? It really, the effect will only be seen, or the impact will be seen if we have enough awareness. Or I think it's like a chicken and egg situation as well, right? Policies, communities, policies. We basically just affect each other, the actions that we do. I also must admit that there still has to be a lot of work. We still have a long way to go in terms of making people in our community, I'm talking about Sabah, right, realize the impact of our consumption every day. And the pandemic didn't help with that situation. Now we have more types of ways to deal with. Right, so I'm just going to check in with our organizers, with maybe Nisa or Liana, if we have time for one more, or do we wrap up?
Sure, we can have time for one or two more questions or comments.
All right, then maybe let's go on to the simpler ones. Feels it was starting to feel like it was getting a little academic in here, and I hope we didn't lose any of our audience, passionate people, right? Is it possible? I think we have one here that asks, is it possible to stop production of plastics? Oh, it's from Brit again. Is it possible, do you think, to stop the production of plastics? Maybe Nick or Anton can take this one. How about you, Nick?
I'm willing to start out with some comments. I think that the simplest answer is no. No. And the reason for that is that there are many plastics that are extremely beneficial to humankind, and maybe the easiest way to think of that is think of a medical syringe. They're things that have advanced humanity immensely, and we would be lost without the ability to have rapid injections across the board. Certainly, if you think about the recent or the ongoing pandemic that we're facing, there are plastics in the world that are needed, and our task is to figure out how we develop plastics in such a way that those plastics can either be broken down at some point, broken down safely at some point, and how we can develop a set of plastics that maybe are a lot more durable. Of course, keep in mind that for many manufacturers, durability is a bad thing because it prevents the consumer from buying them all over again. And so we need to get to a point where that isn't the driver behind why we are creating plastics. So in short, I'd say no, we're not going to eliminate plastics from the planet. Yeah. But yes, there should be mechanisms to eliminate some minimize other forms of plastics that do get created.
Anton, you want to say something?
Quick one. I agree. We can't get rid of the plastics. It's like saying we discovered fire, let's stop it because it burns down something. But as you know, my product design background, I think we as humans, we have to find new answers, new technologies, new solutions so that we turn it into a circular product whereby the life, it emerges and it goes back again. It doesn't disappear into the earth. So one good thing is design. As design, we should be finding answers. Therefore, we produce products that are going to last us, that are beneficial to humans, not give us more problems, which is the case with plastic packaging. So we came up with this problem. We came up with a product, then we had a problem. Now we have to find the solutions. And I think it is well within our means to find the answers. We just have to think beyond just making quick money.
Yeah, and beyond conveniences to the consumers, I think I come here as wearing the hat of not only a moderator but also fellow consumers of everyday products that actually require us more in introspection than we think it does. Like, do I really need this? Okay, it's wrapped in plastic. Like, I tell you, when I buy biscuits now for the kids, I try to reduce them. I try to make them when I have time, which is like once a year. But when I have to buy, when you have to resort to buying, like, how do we get our community to come to a point of awareness whereby you think more than twice before purchasing something? And I think also that we need to do more in holding companies and manufacturers that produce these plastics accountable for their contribution to the problem. I think you know what I mean. Like here in Sabah, consumerism especially, it's done mindlessly. We just buy whatever they're wrapped in. We don't question. We use them and we throw them away. And so there has to be a lot of accountability on the part of the makers and manufacturers as well. But unfortunately,
agree,
that's
Amy.
all the time that we have.
I was just going to say quickly, everything you said,
Yeah.
Which is why we collect that data as a part of the CAP, right? So that you know who you want to talk to. And also that limit of choices. I use the biscuit and cookie example a lot. Like if you want a pack of cookies, you really don't have a choice, right? You have no choice right now. It's either bake it yourself, yes. And I'm with you, busy parent who has, not a lot of time to do that. So anyway, it's really complex. Yet I don't want people to feel like if you can make choices, those choices taken collectively can make a difference. But communicating to folks to how to change the bigger system. So if you think those companies need to know that you don't appreciate not being able to get their product in a different type of packaging, tell them. Now, Anton's, an expert here, and I know there's challenges with changing that, but they still need to hear from people to say, I actually want a different system. Yeah,
correct. I think we empower each other, right? I think businesses are only providing what they consider, what the big masses of people want, what the demand is, but also consumers are just consuming whatever the makers are making. So there has to be, again, communication, bridge the gap, right? There has to be communication between the users and the makers. And I think slowly we'll achieve something from there. Before we run out of time, because I think we are over time, just really want to thank all of us speakers for your insights that you have shared with us today. And I truly hope that our listeners, our audience, our participants, attendees have gained, if not anything new, right? Plastic problem is nothing new. If not gained something new, I always feel that you gain reminders and resparking of that passion, of that hope, that there is hope in solving this problem, because the problem can be so massive that it's easy to just, I don't think I can solve this, and give up. So yeah, we hope that the connections built through these kind of programs will be able to be maintained and sustained until we see progress. I think it's a good time to hand it back to the people handling the real superheroes working behind the scenes, Nisa and Liana. Where are we? How do we drive this home?
Thank you, Amy, for amazing moderating the session, and also, of course, to our speakers. So, from the US Embassy, we hope that this talk will be beneficial for you. I know it's very much centered on Sabah and perhaps on Malaysia, but I think this problem is kind of being replicated, can be found elsewhere, right? In one form or another. So we hope that all of you would benefit from it. And I think I saw from the from a comment somewhere that there's someone that would be interested to engage further with our speakers. So fellow speakers, if you are comfortable with, feel free to drop your email address to the comment section here. And we will leave this session on for a few more minutes just for people to take notes, to kind of absorb everything, and also to take notes of the email address and whatnot. Okay, but for now, thank you everyone, and we hope that we can have you, Amy, Anton, Dr. Jenna, and Dr. Nick together again in the future. And of course, we hope that the participants here would come in again in the future. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
And
you,
have a nice
Nita.
day,
everyone.
Thank you, Liana. Yeah, I see some familiar names. Simon, you're here from Blue Hope. Woot woot. Blue Hope also is the other organization that I've been working with. I think we did a few webinars before, and lots of exciting things coming up this year from Blue Hope in regards to plastic waste management as well. So it's good. And they're asking if